Hello guys, welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to look at how to use useState hook in React using plain JavaScript and TypeScript. I have a plain React project set up here. Now let's import the hook itself. We are going to use name import, and we are going to make a small counter. App is a functional component. We can use hooks only in functional components. So let's start using it. I'm going to define a variable called state, and I'm going to run this function useState. Now useState takes the initial value of the state you want to set. So for example, here I want to start with 0, like that. Now let's console log state and let's see what it gives us. You can right click on the browser window and inspect element. Here you can go into console. Now as you can see, we console logged an array. The first value of the array is the state itself, and the second value is a function. We can use this function to set the new state in our hook. Instead of setting this to a variable, we can destructure this into an array. So we can say count, and the second value is the function. So we can say set count. You can name this anything you want. And I'm going to display the state here. Now you can see our initial state is shown here. Now we want to increase the value when the button is clicked. So let's write an on-click event handler. And I'm going to run an arrow function here, which is going to call set count to the initial count plus 1. I'll just close this. So when we click on this button, our count increases. We can use useState to set an object state or string state. In fact, we can use it to store any kind of data type. Remember, we can always set the initial state of a variable by passing the initial state into the useState function. Now let's see how we can do this in TypeScript. Now we have a TypeScript project set up. We have a click button which currently does nothing, and we have something to display our count. So let's import our useState hook like that. I'm quickly going to define this as a functional component. Using inbuilt react.fc. We have to define it as an arrow function. Great. Now, as we did in the JavaScript tutorial, we want to define a variable and destructure it. We're going to call the useState function with the initial state. And then we can use this state directly here. So as you can see, we have 0 appearing here. Now if you hover over the useState function itself, we can see that it is inferring by itself that we want to set numeric state. It is inferring this from the 0 we put as the initial value. But we can also specify the state by ourselves using generics. So we can use these angle brackets and set the data type of the state to number. Now you would ask, why should we write this extra line of code when TypeScript can infer by itself? My answer to that is that TypeScript sometimes can't infer everything. For example, if I have another variable and I'm going to call it string array, and we're going to call the function set string array. And now if I use useState and I pass in an empty array as an initial state, you can see that TypeScript doesn't know what type of array this is. So here we are not taking the advantage of type safety. So what we can do here is pass in a generic. Generic helps us to specify what type of data type you want to use here. So I want this to be a string array. As you can see, now this is a string array. As we did in plain JavaScript, we can also set object state, and in fact we can do it with any data type. I'm passing an empty object here, but what if I wanted to define the structure of this object? I can use generic here again. I can say that I want an object which has an ID field which is of type number. Now you can see this is TypeScript is already giving me error that you can't initialize it as an empty object. You have to always give an ID. So I'm going to give it an ID of 0. And now it is not giving me any error. I can extrapolate this outside as well. I can define new type for an object using the keyword interface. And I want it to have an ID which is number. Then I can pass this object type into this generic. Now let's complete what we started. We don't need this code, as this was only for explaining the concept. Now when the button is clicked, I'm going to run an arrow function which is going to set the count to the initial count plus 1. And there we have it. I want to quickly demonstrate why using TypeScript here is very helpful. So I have this object type defined again here, and if I try to call the setObject function, and if I try to pass some wrong values in, like uid set to string or some string, then it gives me error. It always wants me to set an ID key and a numeric value. So let's change this ID1. Now it's not mad at me. Hit like if you liked the video and subscribe for more. I have a full series on how to use React Redux with TypeScript if you want to check it out in the I button above. Thanks for watching.